Misano Adriatico, only 14,000 inhabitants. The construction of Porto Verde in the mid-1960s and the introduction of circuit racing in the following decade made this location what it is today. All about bikes, MotoGP and the Motul FIM Superbike World Championship are the twin pillars of the venue, and it's the latter that heads into round 4 of its 2022 campaign today. Located just 3 kilometres from the Adriatic coast, the Misano World Circuit Marco Simoncelli is one of WorldSBK's most historic venues. Constructed in the early 1970s, this is our 29th visit and the 13th on the current 4.2 kilometre layout. Of 16 corners, the top 3 overtaking opportunities. Into turn 1, the start-finish straight is only just over 500 metres long, but riders reach over 260 kilometres per hour before 245 metres over 4 seconds on the brakes, the heaviest deceleration on the circuit. The second sector of the lap comprises just 3 corners, but they provide possibly the best chance to make a move, coming off turn 6 through the high-speed kink at turn 7 and into La Quecha. From there, the third sector sees the riders gradually drop their speeds through a series of decreasing radius corners towards the slowest on the circuit. Caro, really the last opportunity to go side by side. Toprak Razgatlioglu used this turn 14 to good effect to pass Michael Ruben Rinaldi for victory in race 2 last year. But it's Rinaldi who holds the race lap record from his Superpole race win in 2021. Last season, the Motul FIM Superbike World Championships top trio shared no less than 13 race podiums, a record for the series. 9 races down in 2022, and our top 3 from 3 different manufacturers, remember, have shared the podium 8 times. Coming up, race 1 of the Emilia-Romagna round, Steve English alongside me, an unprecedented level of consistency from our 3 lead men, although very early after just 3 rounds, does rather look as though we have our championship medalists. The question is in what order?
I think it's very clear we've got our top 3 in the championship. They've established themselves in the opening 3 rounds as Bautista, Razgatlioglu and Ray, and now it's up to them to make sure they can consistently apply the pressure on one another. We've only seen one race where it wasn't all 3 of them on the podium. That was whenever Jonathan Ray and Toprak Razgatlioglu crashed into each other in Assen. Other than that, all 3 of them have been faultless this season.
Strong signs early on in this weekend as far as home manufacturer Ducati are concerned. Prevalence of some of the independent riders on Ducati machinery, and also both of the official Ducati riders on the front 2 rows of the grid for race 1 this afternoon. And they have the pole man as well, Alvaro Bautista, securing his first pole position since San Juan 2019. His return to the Ducati manufacturer for this season, his first though of the 2022 campaign, given the way he's generally moved forward in the opening rounds from behind Toprak and Jonathan Ray. We should be looking at a potential Alvaro Bautista domination here.
Bautista can run away from the field, but only if they fight with one another. So for Jonathan Ray, for Razgatlioglu on the front row of the grid, they know that they need to get in front of the Ducati rider, upset his rhythm. Everyone's got a plan until they're punched in the face. They need to keep punching all the way through this race.
Yes, we've seen Alvaro Bautista, thinking back 3 years ago, the way he was able to dominate the races when he was up towards the front of the grid, accelerating off into the distance. But he hasn't had that same level of domination in 2022 thus far. He does lead by 17 points, but there's been a little bit of good fortune in that, with non-scores for both Jonathan Ray and Toprak Razgatlioglu from race 2 in Assen. Just going back to the Superpole results, we've got Bautista's 2 main championship rivals directly alongside him on the grid. Toprak with a 10th consecutive front row start, second Yamaha rider to manage that after Ben Spies in 2009. A 100th front row Superpole effort from Jonathan Ray gives him the record in Superbikes ahead of Troy Corser. Here is Alvaro Bautista, the current championship leader and the only rider who's made every podium in 2022, a race winner in each of the 3 rounds thus far. His latest, of course, a spectacular final lap effort at the end of race 1 in Estoril, in which he pipped Toprak Razgatlioglu by less than 0.2 of a second in the run to the line.
Yeah, and this is just some of the action that we saw at the last time out in Estoril, and the action really was frantic all the way through. We had 3 great races, 3 races that just show just how good World Superbikes is right now. Almost every time that we see these 3 guys line up on the racetrack, they do something a bit special. This was a bit special at the end of the race, and you can see for Toprak the frustration that he had just being outgunned to the line by Alvaro Bautista. The run from turn 10 down the back straight, that suits the Ducati as well, and that's where Bautista is going to pick up an awful lot of easy overtaking moves if there's anyone around him. That's the fear for everyone else. Jonathan Rea saying yesterday he needs to force overtaking moves into turn 1, turn 3, turn 8, maybe turn 10, but the Ducati's able to make a lot of moves a lot easier in places.
Jonathan Rea with back-to-back wins on his account after Sunday successes in Estoril that narrowed the gap at the top, as I said, to 17 points. There's still that race 2 retirement in Assen that we keep going back to, but for those 25 points lost that day to Bautista, he would be leading the series now.
Yeah, and certainly for Rea, we've seen him at the peak of his ability this season, and that says a lot considering the success that we've had over the years from Jonathan. The Kawasaki is a better bike than it was last year. Here in Estoril, here in Misano was one of the toughest tracks for them last year. Really struggled in the hot conditions. Right now we've got 44 degrees track temperature, and that's very hot conditions. That's where the Kawasaki was struggling last year. It's a lot better now, but this is the real test.
Yes, a big moment for Jonathan Rea coming off the final turn. There was no doubt about how hard he was having to push to stay in front of Bautista.
I was asking Jonathan about that after the race, and he said, you know what, I was either going to send it to the moon or I was going to send it to the top step of the podium, and it worked out well for him.
The problem with that approach is that he did send it to the moon a couple of times last season. This season, though, he's shown no signs of that lack of feeling that caused him to have a few incidents last year that ultimately robbed him of the title.
Yeah, it was all front-end issues for Rea and Kawasaki last year. If you think back to Donington, Most, or any of the high-profile crashes he had, they were always when the front end bottomed out, and he just didn't have any more travel in the suspension and caused a crash. That seems to be less and less of an issue for him because the Showa suspension has had big upgrades for Kawasaki this year. But what's interesting is here in Misano, there's a lot of riders suffering a lot in the front end, a lot of chatter issues on the run through the last corner and a couple of other places. So that's something that Rea is going to have to keep an eye on during this race.
Toprak Razgatlioglu, our most recent Misano winner, took race 2 here in 2021, his 4th podium at the venue. That win, remember, opened the floodgates for him on the way to his title, and he'll hope that this weekend will provide a similar portent. He is still winless in 2022, twice being passed on the final lap and denied victory in Estoril 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, and this almost crash, or it was certainly a crash, it just wasn't statistically one, was a big save from Toprak. But what made it even more impressive was look at this as he comes out of the chicane, immediately tries to attack back on Jonathan Rea. He's not thinking, oh, I'm still in the race, I can still pick up second spot. He's thinking, I'm in a position to be able to attack here, and that's all he wanted to do.
And he's not been far away from taking that long-awaited first victory in his title defence.
No, he's been really close. The last couple of rounds, big steps forward. This is a track that he loves. This track he's always very competitive at, so you wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see him add to his race 2 success from last year.
And important progress from Yamaha, particularly before the 3rd round, it would appear.
Yeah, that's the big thing for Yamaha, and they have made big changes to that bike this year. It does look like the changes are starting to really pay off, but it is a question of trying to get the most out of that package when you're up against Bautista and Rea.
It's going to be hard to get to this man, isn't it, for the cameraman? Michael Ruben Rinaldi, certainly Mr. Popular this weekend. Home man, of course, born less than 30 kilometres from the circuit and representing the home manufacturer as well, based just to the northwest of Bologna. Can't get much better than his exploits here in 2021, can he, Michael Ruben Rinaldi? 2 wins and a second, just fell short of the triple.
I think one thing there as well, it's not just the cameraman that's struggling to get around. Even just coming up to the commentary box before the Supersport 300 race, the masses of people in the paddock, it really is back to what we were used to coming to Misano a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and exactly what you want to see.
Yes, I got stuck the wrong side of the carpet on the other side of the Motul Action box, so I had quite a journey down to the commentary box as we continue our build-up then for race 1 here at the Emilia-Romagna round. This, of course, is Alex Lowe's, still chasing his first top 3 finish of 2022. We know the pace is there, though. He was on the front row of the grid in Assen. He's had 2 4th places, and the setup change before Estoril seems to have brought him even closer to that lead trio.
Yeah, and that's exactly what all of those riders in that second group have to do. It's about closing up on them and trying to give themselves a chance. Lowe's, Rinaldi, Locatelli, good riders that can all challenge for race victories. It's just really difficult to break onto the podium whenever you've got 3 riders as strong as consistent as what we have.
Axel Bassani has made no secret of his desire to be part of the Ducati factory team in the future. His 2nd season now with Moto Corsa. This is the kind of weekend where he really needs to make a statement. At the end of the weekend in Estoril, I spoke to him and he was really frustrated and made a couple of comments about errors from the team during that weekend as well. He obviously feels that if he were given his opportunity, he'd be far closer to the front.
Yeah, and I think that it is one of those questions always about the satellite operations within manufacturers or the customer teams. what's the actual strength of those teams? Obviously, last year we saw from Misano, he had some really good weekends that gave high points to his season, but consistency wasn't where he would have wanted it to be. This season's been pretty difficult for him as well. He's down 9th in the championship standings. He's had a few decent performances, but he's struggled for consistency, and that's the big thing. When you think about Rinaldi, before he got his chance to move on to the factory seat, he was arguably a bit more consistent than what we've seen from Bassani.
Yes, the super poles have often been a weakness for Bassani, a little bit inconsistent in those. Top independent though on the grid, lines up P10, so every chance of moving forward, because we do anticipate that particularly in hot track conditions, the Ducati should work well in the second half of the race. It'll
definitely work well. That's the big strength of that bike. We saw it last year here in Misano, where we're now already at 45 degrees track temperature. It keeps just clawing up 1 degree here, 1 degree there, so you'd imagine we're going to be pretty close to 50 degrees by the end of this race, so it is going to be a real challenge for everyone out there. The Ducati generates grip in those conditions better than anyone else. It's soft on its tyres, and it's got riders like Bautista and Rinaldi that just their riding style suits the greasy track surface, but we saw last year as well, Bassani very strong here as well in the hot conditions.
While we're talking tyres, Pirelli, our title sponsor for the 2022 Emilia-Romagna round. The news from them this weekend, they've brought 3 super soft SCX rear tyres with them to Misano for the Superbike class. So that's a standard solution, plus also the so-called SCX-A and SCX-B, both with slightly different specifications.
Yeah, and the big change for Pirelli is that they traditionally use Misano as one of the big test grounds for them in WorldSBK, because it's usually the first time we come to a really big and hot track surface, and it gives them a chance to be able to really assess whether or not new tyres are working. That's actually why they have 2 new options for this weekend. It's the way that the calendar's fallen, and this gives them the chance to be able to go out there and get good information with both sets of tyres. The one problem for that is riders complain because in their allocation they arguably don't have enough tyres to really be able to assess things back to back between 3 different tyres, so that's a bit of an issue. That's where you really need to work well as a team. You need one rider on one tyre, another rider on the other tyre, and then try and work together to be able to assess the tyres. I wonder, will we see someone take a bit of a gamble now today? Most riders have been using what's been called the A tyre. The 452 is the code that you'll hear the riders talk about. But that tyre basically gives a little bit more support. Exiting the corner, it's a little bit better, and it allows them to be a little bit more consistent. Garrett Gerloff used it for 18 laps yesterday, and on lap 16 he said his fastest lap of the stint. So it does show that the tyre can really manage itself really well around here. Alvaro Bautista, though, he used that tyre and said it had too much grip. And that might sound a little bit crazy, but the reason that was causing problems was with the extra grip, it was pushing the front of the bike as well. So he wanted something that maybe would just be a little bit less in terms of the ultimate grip, but suited his riding style a little bit more. So it'll be interesting to see if he's one of the few riders that might opt for one of the other tyres.
As we come through the sighting lap and towards the grid, a couple of other bits of rider news. We've got Garrett Gerloff returning to racing today following his high-speed crash during free practice in Estoril. Of course, cost him the whole round as a result of a knee injury. He's still carrying that knock, bandaged up this weekend. 7th place in Assen, his best result. It's been a difficult 2020 season for him thus far. We've also got Philip Ertl back on the grid after he suffered his broken right collarbone, and he's had that operated on subsequently. We're unfortunately without Luca Myers. He's out with a fractured bone in his right hand. Of course, that following a crash in the Superpole race at the Estoril round. Tito Rabat deputises for him, and we've got Gabriele Riu back on the grid this weekend, again in officially as a wildcard rider. His 3rd appearance though in the 4 rounds this season so far. Heading up towards the front of the grid then for this 2022 Emilia-Romagna round, the first race of the weekend, our lone visit to Italy, and it has been good to see the paddock and the grandstands packed out.
Yeah, how busy does the grid look as well? After the last couple of years, we haven't seen anything like this for a long time. A lot of photographers out, there's a lot of media here, a lot of attention this weekend for WorldSBK, and rightly so considering the battles that we've been having throughout the course of this season.
Look at the grid then, starting with your pole man for the first time in 2022, Alvaro Bautista, at the venue where he scored his first MotoGP podium 10 years ago. won the Super Pole race here in 2019, his 14th victory of the season, before it then all unravelled with a fall from the lead in race 2. He only took 2 more wins in the next 6 rounds after leaving this venue.
Yeah, and this will be one of the big tests for Bautista. See how he deals with the pressure that he's going to be under from Toprak and Ray, 2 riders that do love this track. Toprak always strong here.
Toprak Razgatlioglu still chasing his first victory of this season, but he has led 7 of the 9 races, and that's actually the same number as rivals Bautista and Ray have led. Toprak led his first Superbike race in Misano back in 2019, took the first victory of his title-winning 2021 campaign here, and he'll hope to repeat that feat this weekend.
Yeah, and I think for Toprak, he knows that this is a track that suits his riding style very well. A few heavy braking zones on the angle, and that's always where he's very confident.
Misano is statistically Jonathan Ray's 5th best track, 15 podiums on the board for him. Took his first top flight win here in 2009. He's taken 8 in total. Last year was the first time he'd gone without a win here since he joined Kawasaki. 3 third places, all he could manage.
Yeah, and for Jonathan, this was as tough as it got last season. Really was a struggle to get the most out of that bike. Just didn't really have the ability to use the softest tyre and challenge at the front. And this weekend, this season, it does seem that that's the one area where Kawasaki's made a big step, and he should be able to use it well today.
Second row of the grid, Alex Lowes, Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Andrea Locatelli. Lowes 16 races now without a podium finish. Hasn't gone this long outside of the top 3 since 2016, but 3 retirements in the opening 5 races, 2 of them as a result of mechanical problems, and he sits 7th in the standings, only 30 points back from 4th.
Yeah, and the one thing for Lowes, Rinaldi, Locatelli, 4th is the goal. That's the position that they have to make sure that they're able to finish in to be able to have a successful season and try and challenge for podiums, pick up some race wins.
Alvaro Bautista receiving the Super Pole watch for his efforts in single lap pace this morning, a new lap record that he managed to set as well for his first pole of 2022, and therefore his first since San Juan 2019, his last in his previous spell with Ducati before 2 seasons rather in the doldrums with Honda, but he's very much back up at the front now. This is Andrea Locatelli. 3 9th places for him in Misano last season. That was only his 3rd round in the top flight, and he's been a far more consistent front runner since then. In fact, he hasn't been out of the top 5 in any of the races he's finished this season so far. Yeah,
Locatelli's been really strong and consistent this year. The big thing for him in 2022 is to be able to try and get some more podiums, try and make sure he's able to pick up his first race victory, but it is tough whenever you've got such consistency at the front. His goal, same as for Lowes and Rinaldi, make sure you're 4th in the championship at the end of the season.
Yes, talking about Rinaldi, he's the man who lines up between Alex Lowes and Andrea Locatelli. Real scrum around him on the grid at the moment, as there is around Alvaro Bautista as well. Plenty of attention from the home fans and, of course, from media outlets as well, just to try and get a glimpse of this man, Michael Ruben Rinaldi, who was top scorer in the 2021 Emilia-Romagna round. 57 out of a possible 62 points. Could do with another result like that this weekend, couldn't he? After the 2 most recent rounds, 7th place from race 2 in Assen has been his best result in that spell.
Yeah, and you can see there just a little bit of last-minute advice from Serafino down there as well, the team manager. We're going to get the chance to hear from Michael Ruben Rinaldi down on the grid with Dave Goddard.
Michael, your home round this weekend, Ducati's home round, you must be very excited, especially after your performance here last year.
Yeah, it's nice to race at home. Now it's very, very hot, so it will be a tough race, but we will give our 100%.
Best of luck, Michael.
Thank you, bye-bye.
Yes, we know that Michael Ruben Rinaldi is going to be giving it everything to chase P1 and to restore himself to the top. Jonathan Ray, a look of steely determination. He's the man with the most fastest laps in feature-length races in 2022. The question is, will he have the pace over the long haul? That's where we anticipate Ducati having the advantage.
And one of the big questions is going to be which tyres everyone decides to use. You can see there those 2 new options from Pirelli. So we've got 3 X tyres available. So that's the super soft compound. The changes with the new tyre, basically a change in the carcass and how they've managed to manufacture that. So one of the big things is going to be who's going to opt for which tyre. Will it give any of them a significant advantage in a different area? Pirelli have said that really with the new option tyres, they're trying to just try and allow riders to use slightly different riding styles. So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Third row of the grid with Xavi Vierge, Iker Lecuona and Scott Redding. Vierge 28 points back from his teammate Lecuona as things stand. The pair have been fairly evenly matched aside from Assen. Vierge picked up a season's best 5th in Estoril 3 weeks ago, beat Lecuona in that race. He's had a solid 5 top 10 finishes in 9 races.
Yeah, it's been a decent start to the season for him, especially considering he came into the year with a rib injury that was aggravated in the opening rounds of the year, and he's been able to do a really good job to get pretty close to matching his teammate Iker Lecuona at times.
Lecuona finishing directly behind Andrea Locatelli in 5 of the races this season so far. That's who he trails in the series overall as well. So the second Yamaha, very much the target for the top Honda, currently 5th in the championship standings. 9th from Bautista is the best any Honda has managed overall in the last 5 years. So a step forward for HRC by the looks of things.
Yeah, it certainly is, and you only have to look at what we've seen from Lecuona over the course of the season so far. There's around about 30 points between the 2 Honda riders in the championship standings, but they've been much closer matched, which is what Honda need. 2 riders that are fast and consistent.
3 independents lining up on row 4. Axel Bassani starts from P10. 7 top 10 finishes from 9 races this season so far. His best results all coming at the end of each round. Great value he was here last year with 6th place and 2 7ths. He's hit the ground running this weekend as well. A very important round for him, as you can see.
Yeah, you can see the fan club out in force, and certainly there's been a lot of demand on Axel Bassani over the course of this weekend so far, as there is for all the Italian riders.
Scott Redding stretching himself out. He completes our 3rd row of the grid. This, of course, a venue that he rides well. Scored his first MotoGP podium here in 2015. Didn't have the best of visits last year, 3 4th places, but in the context of his current struggles, I think he would have taken a result like that. 11th in the championship, only 3 points though from the top BMW.
Yeah, and I think for Redding, after what happened at the opening rounds of the year, it was really good to be able to see him make progress from Assen, and for BMW they need to make sure that they're able to consistently build into that.
As we continue on through the grid, Scott Redding completing the 3rd row, all of the assembled dignitaries and 2-wheeled royalty in position for us as well.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing like a race in the middle of Italy to get out all the stars.
An emperor, no less. As we continue on. 4th row of the grid, Axel Bassani, Garrett Gerloff and Loris Baz. Gerloff returning to racing, as I said, following his crash during free practice in Estoril. 12th in the standings at the moment, but even accounting for 3 missed races in the Estoril round. It's been a long way from the form that left him 6th in the championship this time last year. 5 podiums at 4 different circuits in the last 2 years, so we do know he's capable.
More than capable, but he's also a rider under pressure this weekend in particular. Here and Donington, they're going to be seen as 2 of the big rounds to assess whether or not he'll be able to stay with that GRT Yamaha squad next year. Completing
the 4th row of the grid is Loris Baz. 5 top 5 finishes, including 2 podiums in just 5 races on Ducati machinery last year. Only 4 in 3 rounds since moving back to BMW. 2 6th places, the best of his results. Podium finisher here, of course, in 2014 with KRT. That now will very much feel a distant memory. 4th row, or 5th row of the grid rather, Philip Ertl, Roberto Tamburini and Kota Nozane. Ertl, as I mentioned previously, returning from that broken right collarbone he sustained during practice in Estoril. Just at the wrong time, really, of his rookie season, after he'd shown some good progress with 2 top 10 finishes in Assen. 7th in race 1 of the Dutch round is his best result to date.
Yeah, and for Ertl, he's had a couple of really fast laps in the free practice session, so he's got a 1-lap pace to be able to move a little bit further up, but if he's able to come away with top 10 finishes, that's a good sign.
Roberto Tamburini returning this weekend from a fractured right foot he sustained in training before the Estoril round, and targeting his first top 10 finish in the Superbike class. He was 11th at the end of race 2 in Assen. That's the closest he's yet come in his rookie campaign.
Yeah, and for Tamburini, the goal is always just to be able to get yourself into the points-paying positions. Now it's up to him to be able to show that the Yamaha is working well around here and to be able to take advantage of that.
Completing the 5th row of the grid is Kota Nozane, the former Japanese champion, who's made a poorer start to this season than last, to be honest. He didn't exactly sparkle either in 2021. Top 10 finish on his debut in Aragon last year, scored 17 points from the first 3 rounds. He's had just 2 top 10 finishes since, has only 5 points on the board in 2022.
Yeah, and there's a lot of questions rolling around the paddock now about whether or not Nozane will be on that bike next year. Obviously a very competitive bike and team, but the Japanese passport's been crucial for him to get that seat for 2 years.
Christophe Pinsent, Eugene Laverty and Hafiz Shireen on row 6. This is Pinsent, who failed to score here in Misano last year, but went on to better in the second half of the campaign. He'll hope that he can improve this year as well, having started with only 2 point scoring finishes from the first 9 races. Laverty alongside him scored his last podium here in Misano, that was all the way back in 2018. The last 3 years, 2 of them with BMW, of course, have been pretty lean. 2022, no different. He's 15th in the championship, where he finished 2020 with the official BMW team.
Yeah, and the one thing for Laverty is it's just trying to find that light at the end of the tunnel, and it's pretty tricky to see it right now for him, but he's been working hard. He says that the team's really well structured and that they're doing their best to be able to get something more out of that package. The goal for him has to be just to make sure you're closer to Loris Baz. Baz, of course, on the 4th row of the grid.
Hafiz Shireen completes row number 6 with Tito Rabat, Gabriele Riu and Luca Bernardi behind him on row 7. Row 8 with Tati Mercado, Ilya Mikhalczyk and Oliver Koenig. And the 9th row, the 25th rider on the grid, is Alessandro Del Bianco. Well, we've been speaking about what an important moment it is for Ducati when they have their home round, our lone visit to Italy, but also just 150 kilometres from the factory. As you can see, they've got all of the big wigs here with them this weekend. The general manager, the sporting director, and Chaz Davies doing a little bit of mingling with them, but still very much a part of that Ducati family as well.
Yeah, and certainly for Ducati, it's a big weekend for them, and a weekend where they'd certainly expect to be able to have a really good result. Bautista on the pole means that they've got that opportunity here in this race.
Continuing on with our grid, row number 7, Tito Rabat, mentioned previously, he comes in as a replacement rider, and he substituting for Luca Mayas. Mentioned previously his fractured bone in his right hand. So Rabat, 33-year-old Spaniard, taking his first start of 2022, the 2014 Moto2 World Champion. Gabriele Riu from 20th position on the grid, and Luca Bernardi completing row 7, as I mentioned previously. Ilya Mikhalczyk coming in for a second appearance this season, again as a replacement for Michael van der Mark, the Dutchman having recovered from winter training injury, crashed again at Estoril. 25 riders on the grid then, 21 laps ahead of us here in the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli. Misano, historic Ducati territory, 140 kilometres from their factory. They've won more races here than any single manufacturer has at any other circuit, including 2 through their home star, Michael Ruben Rinaldi, last year. But in the last 7 visits, Kawasaki have done their best to paint the town green with 11 wins. And the last 4 races here have been won by 3 different manufacturers. Will Ducati restore their red wall in 2022? Steve English alongside me, it's Ducati man Alvaro Bautista who leads the championship standings, 17 points clear of his nearest rival. He hasn't been off the podium in 2022. Didn't have a great weekend here 3 years ago, but so far at least, this is a very different Bautista.
Yeah, he's been really strong and consistent all the way through this season, and you can see from the form that we've had all the way through this weekend that he's really ready to be able to give Ducati a home race victory. Starting from pole position gives him the opportunity to be able to run away from the field. We've just got the tyre sheet up from Pirelli. Interestingly, Bautista is using a different development X tyre. So Pirelli have brought 3 X tyres, the super soft compound tyres, to Misano, and they've got 2 development tyres, 2 brand new tyres. For Jonathan Rea, Toprak Razgatlioglu, the majority of the field, they're using one option of those development tyres. Bautista and Rinaldi on the Ducatis going in opposite direction. They said yesterday that the tyre that the Yamahas and Kawasaki's are using was actually generating too much grip for them. It was pushing the front, so now they've opted for a different tyre. So this is going to be a little bit interesting to see how that all plays out during the course of the race.
And also how that interacts with the temperatures, which was one of the key things when we heard from Pirelli earlier on in this weekend, that they were trying to mitigate against with these 2 new tyres, slightly different structure that they feel may well become an option of choice in hotter temperatures in the future.
Yeah, the one problem that they had yesterday was it wasn't actually that hot. It was around about 30 degrees track temperature yesterday, not enough to really test the full extent of these tyres. Now we've got those conditions. It's 45 degrees track temperature, the hottest we've been all the way through this weekend, and now is the real test for whether or not anyone's really going to be able to make that rubber last all the way through. We saw in yesterday's free practice sessions, Garrett Gerloff was able to use the X tyre really well for an 18-lap run, but that was in cooler temperatures. What kind of pace are we going to see? Last year it was all about who was able to keep in the low one then at 35 35s. This race is going to be won by who stays in the 34s.
And Misano has provided surprises in the past for us as well with tyre wear and hot temperatures, so that's going to be a factor. The second half of the race may very well look very different to the first half of the race. A reminder of the championship standings: it's Alvaro Bautista who leads us on 161 points, ahead of Jonathan Ray, second as things stand on 144. Toprak Razgatlioglu trails the series leader by 52 points as things stand, still looking for his first race victory of 2022. Riders settling into position then. Nervous last few moments. Green flag at the back of the grids. Race 1 of the 2022 Emilia-Romagna round gets underway. Alvaro Bautista from pole, but he's going to lose top spot as they head down towards turn number 1. Toprak Razgatlioglu comes through as they flash past our commentary position into the first bend. Michael Ruben Rinaldi already making his dive for positions, going side by side with Andrea Locatelli for 5th position. He successfully claimed that. His KRT still 3 and 4. Jonathan Ray with Alex Lowe's directly behind him. Axel Bassani going for a bold move further back down the order, trying to pass Andrea Locatelli for 6th. Locatelli though held on. Bassani making swift progress on the opening lap. Xavi Vierge relegated down to 8th, and Ika Lewandowski dropping all the way back down to 12th position. Disastrous start for him. Race here for 2nd position. Razgatlioglu on the inside. Jonathan Ray will try to go the long way round. Bautista and Razgatlioglu scrapping it out up at the head of the field, and they're almost 3 abreast now as Bautista claims the lead, recovers the lead, and now Razgatlioglu cuts through. Ray going the long way round is going to try and sweep around the outside now of Bautista, give himself track position now as they come onto the next turn, and in the slipstream of Toprak Razgatlioglu. What a frantic opening lap this has been between the 3 of them.
Yeah, we saw on the run down in towards turn 8, Bautista just able to use the power of that Ducati to be able to get himself out in the front. But for Razgatlioglu and Ray, they weren't going to be able to take that one lying down. They were attacking straight back. That's what they need to do during this race.
Riding on board with Alvaro Bautista, looking back at Jonathan Ray. You can also see that Michael Ruben Rinaldi has now got through on Alex Lowe's, and Axel Bassani did eventually make his move on Andrea Locatelli. So swift start from both of those Ducati riders. The Moto Corsa Ducati, of course, piloted by Axel Bassani, the number 47, the top independent at the moment in 6th, and he's got Alex Lowe's lined up directly ahead of him here. In fact, he's through on Lowe's before they even get to turn number 1. So Bassani now up into 5th position, and we've got Ducatis in positions 2, 4 and 5, perfectly poised.
Yeah, and that's all you need to know about which bike's working really well right now. Whenever you see Axel Bassani able to come through like that, it really does show just how good that Ducati is. Locatelli now trying to get down the inside of Lowe's as well.
So Alex Lowe's struggling at this stage of the race at least, having already been picked off by Axel Bassani. Bassani up into P5, and Lowe's has lost out on positions there with Locatelli and now Xavi Vierge coming through for 7th place. Meanwhile, a fight for the lead as Razgatlioglu and Bautista again exchange and trade blows in towards La Quercia.
Yeah, what you want to see down the run down in towards turn 8. It looks like Lowe's must have been pushed out a little bit wide on the run through turn 4 there, and that's what cost him a couple of spots and a lot of time. So he's now dropped a 2nd behind Xavi Vierge as well. The big loser on lap 1 though, Scott Redding, went from 9th down to 13th. He's now trying to pick off a couple of riders around him.
Bit of a wheelie there from Jonathan Ray as he tries to get maximum power in towards Curvone, one of the most spectacular areas on this circuit, to watch these superbikes come to blows as Alvaro Bautista tries to stalk Toprak Razgatlioglu. He might have started from pole position, but his rivals aren't making it easy for him. Bautista's going to have to do this from behind, just as he has in his previous 4 race victories in 2022.
Yeah, we'll wait and see what the lap times are right now. Clearly right now it's not that strong a pace at the front of the field because we're seeing this leading group fairly bunched up. In 2019 on the V4O, we saw that Bautista was able to make overtaking moves on the exit of the last corner towards turn 1. We'll see just how strong that bike is this year. Not quite close enough to Toprak to be able to do that. That bodes well for the Yamaha rider, but clearly right now the Ducatis just have that little bit more edge. Jonathan Ray though looks pretty strong at this stage of the race as well.
And in the hands of Axel Bassani last lap around, a 1 minute 34.886, fastest of anyone last time around. Ray now makes his move, strikes on Alvaro Bautista as they come into the Rio loop turns 4 and 5.
That's a great move by Ray into turn 4. You can see just how on the limit he was with that rear end sliding through there. But he's very strong in sector 1, particularly the exit of turn 6. He's able to get that bike hooked up all the way through there. For Bassani on the 47 though, he knows this is a chance to get one over on the factory bike. He wants that factory seat for next year. The only way he's going to get it is by proving he's able to get a really good job done here in Misano.
Bassani with brilliant progress in this race so far. Started in 10th position. Up at the head of the field, Jonathan Rea aggressive there on top rack Razgatlioglu as they came through turns 9 and 10. Overtaking manoeuvres happening absolutely everywhere at the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli today.
Yeah, and for Jonathan Rea, he knows that he needs to try and just get his head down, see if he's able to open up a gap from top rack. If top rack maybe doesn't have the speed just right now at this stage of the race, but you expect to see these three riders stay right with each other. Bassani's done well to latch straight onto the back of Bautista as well.
Bassani is well and truly on the hunt here. The question is he using up too much time making these overtaking manoeuvres in the early stages? That'll only be borne out later on, but at the moment he's sticking with our lead trio, which has been no mean feat throughout 2022. Very few have really been able to tag onto this group, and few have been in the position Bassani is to actually attack them. Bautista with a great run again, coming off the Misano corner at the end of lap number 3, but not quite on terms with top rack Razgatlioglu, who inevitably has the advantage in the braking zone. So the status quo maintained at the head of the field. Jonathan Rea with the new fastest lap of the race at 1:34.723 to hit the front and try and build a gap now from top rack. Quarter of a second behind him, a little bit out of shape as they came through the southern loop. Third position still with Alvaro Bautista. He's under attack though from Axel Bassani.
Yeah, and certainly for Bassani, he knows that there's a good opportunity right now. It was only Jonathan Rea that was faster than him last time around, but for Bautista, is this the chance to make the move into 8?
A real send from Alvaro Bautista into La Quercia, and top rack Razgatlioglu will square it off quite nicely and recover that second place. Those two scrapping with one another is a real danger in the context of their race, because Jonathan Rea is able to ride at the rhythm he wants, to set the pace he wants, and try and break away. Still side by side between Razgatlioglu and Bautista. It's single file through Curvone though, that's for sure, and it's Bautista who's got track position.
Yeah, it's not going to be side by side for too long. Whenever you've got a first or second gear corner leading onto a long straight, that's always going to be Ducati territory.
And Bautista is able to consolidate that position. They now come in towards the slowest corner on the circuit, turn 14. Is there an opportunity for a jab through here? Not quite, as we ride on board with Alvaro Bautista looking back at top rack Razgatlioglu. If we stay on board coming off the final turn here, you'll see Bautista try and accelerate away. This is where we know that Ducati is strong.
Yeah, and certainly for Razgatlioglu, he knows that he needs to be in a position to jump straight back into second spot. He's a little bit too far back. Sector 1's where he's really strong.
Big moment for Bassani going into turn 1. He's run off the circuit altogether. He'll take to the escape road. He has to rejoin within those white lines, and he's done so perfectly without losing too much time either to top rack Razgatlioglu, who was trying to outbrake into turn 1. A little bit ambitious on lap 5 from Bassani.
Yeah, but Bassani hasn't been in too many fights with top rack, so trying to make sure he's able to get his point across with Razgatlioglu there as well. But he's been able to hold on to that 4th position, live to fight another day.
Rinaldi digging in last lap around as well, just maintaining that gap at 0.4 of a second with a new personal best. Andrea Locatelli also recovering in 6th position. Vierge Lowe's, Garrett Gerloff recovering, rounds out a group of riders covered by just 3.5 seconds. Your top 9 at present, with a fairly sizable gap then back to Iker Lecuona, who is the last of the runners inside the top 10 positions at present, but less than 9/10 of a second covering your top 4 as things stand.
Yeah, a bit of a surprise to see that going, struggling a little bit for pace right now. 2 seconds behind his teammate Vierge. They've been really closely matched all the way through this weekend.
Problems for Philip Ertl. He was running up in 12th position, 3rd of the independent runners, and that looks as though he's gone down at La Quercia. So at the end of the long straight that also encompasses the slight kink at turn 7, and Philip Ertl, who remember is on a recovery from injury, that collarbone injury, thankfully straight back up to his feet and reboarding his mission.
Yeah, Bautista clearly the faster rider in this group. He's been able to jump straight back onto the back of Jonathan Rea, but catching him is going to be one thing. It's whether or not he's going to be able to make those moves. We know that Rea has spent a lot of time this year trying to focus on improving the front end to try and give himself the chance to be able to battle it out in a bar-to-bar battle with the likes of Bautista and Razgatlioglu.
Almost a new lap record last time around from Alvaro Bautista, 1:34.371, and remember that lap record of 1:34.356 was set by Michael Ruben Rinaldi in the Super Pole race last year, when he wouldn't have been worrying too much about saving tyres for the second half of the race. So Bautista going at a really good lick at the moment, directly behind Jonathan Rea, and there was little separating the two of them in towards turn number 1. Bautista was almost alongside. Rea just about had the advantage on the brakes, so you fancy Rea's going to have to try and make a bolt for it here through sector 3, because if Bautista's tagged onto his tail coming off turn 16, it's going to be hard for Rea to resist.
That's the one problem for Rea, is that he knows he's not going to be able to resist those moves. There's no replacement for the power that you get from that V4R compared to its rivals, and Bautista knows how to take full advantage advantage of it.
Bassani beginning to drop off now, a few tenths of a second slower than Toprak Razgatlioglu last time around in the battle for third position. We're watching the leaders as Razgatlioglu runs wide and off the circuit onto the green paint and dropping further and further in arrears of Ray and Bautista, your current two race leaders. Frustration perhaps beginning to settle in for Razgatlioglu, who's now half a second down on Bautista, who is hassling and harrying Jonathan Ray, who got a decent run off turn 14, and he's got to try and scamper away now because Bautista is going to be all over him coming off turn 16 and in towards turn 1. We watch Razgatlioglu in third, but Bautista is launching an attack now on Jonathan Ray in those top two positions. Not quite close enough into turn 1 on lap 7.
Yeah, we've seen Toprak run onto the green paint on a couple of occasions now, so he's already been given his track limits warning by the race steward, so that means any more infractions and he's going to be getting a penalty, so Toprak needs to keep an eye on that.
Just notice in the background the shot, Alex Lowe's absolutely glued to the back now of Xavi Vierge in the race for 7th position. So Alex Lowe's, who started all the way up in 4th position, has dropped down towards the fringes of the top 10. He's now making his fight back, and may well just be a matter of time before he picks off Xavi Vierge a couple of tenths of a second faster than him last lap around. Turn 8 is another potential danger zone as far as Jonathan Ray is concerned, but he's managed to build enough of a buffer to hold on against Bautista for now.
Yeah, the one thing for turn 8, turn 10 is that you can attack straight back even if you get overtaken. So if you're in front, you can dictate an awful lot about how the moves are going to be made. Obviously, for Bautista, he's got all that extra top-end power and top speed, so Jonathan Ray needs to find a different way to be able to attack.
Yes, the perfect example in Telequesha was from Bautista himself when he made his move on Razgatlioglu, only for Toprak to square off that turn 8 and fire his way straight back through. But Bautista has seen off the attentions now of Razgatlioglu, who's 6/10 of a second down, still only 8/10 down on Ray, the current race leader, so not entirely out of it. But again, it's another case of Razgatlioglu being in the mix, but not quite at this stage of the race, at least having the pace to go with them. It is a duel at the moment between green and red, just as it was in 2019. Ray versus Bautista once again. Lap 8 begins with Ray setting a new personal best, a 1 minute 34.625, and he's got Bautista where he wants him for the moment, but is Bautista going to have the advantage on tyre life in the second half of this race in hot conditions?
Well, that's going to be the big question, to see what's going to happen as the race progresses. We know that all these riders out racing with tyres they've never raced before. There's only Tamburini, the only rider in the field, using a tyre that he's actually raced in the past, so everyone else, they're going to get into a little bit of the unknown territory in the next few laps.
Yes, we pick up Andrea Locatelli currently in an isolated 6th position. We've got Italians in positions at 4, 5 and 6. Bassani, Rinaldi and Locatelli. Behind them is Vierge versus Lowe's. Lowe's a little bit slower last lap around than Vierge, which is why he's still stuck behind him, even though he's had a couple of jabs already. Back at the front, Ray with Bautista swarming all over the back of him now. Nervous moments for KRT as Bautista tried to line up a move in towards turns 9 and 10. Far from straightforward to make a pass there. Not going to make one through Curvone, but look at the speed of that Ducati. Possibly an opportunity here in towards turn 12. No, you've got to be a little bit too brave to try that.
You've got to be brave to try that move, and Jonathan Ray, it's not the first time he's been racing here at Misano. He's trying to make sure he can cover all those bases. We're only at 1/3 distance though, so a lot of racing left to be done in this one, but it's positive for Kawasaki and for Ray in the 65 last time around. He's able to set a personal best. That shows that the bike's coming into its own right now for him, but it's also pretty clear right now Bautista looks like he's got the ability to be able to put his bike in a little bit of a different place to be able to make the moves with that top speed advantage. That puts a lot of strain on Ray and Razgatlioglu when they get into the braking point to try and attack the bike as well. So it's very much contrasting styles, two very different types of motorcycle at the front of the field.
Yes, new personal best lap last time around from Toprak Razgatlioglu, and I suspect that while Ray and Bautista were scrapping there in that 3rd sector, Ray trying to keep Bautista behind him, that's enabled Toprak to close right back in on them. They've left Bassani, he's 1.5 seconds down now. Rinaldi's 8/10 of a second further back. Locatelli has stuck with his fellow countryman. Vierge in a separate fight, still trying to fend off Alex Lowe's. They come into Telequesha once again on lap number 9, and it's Ray who still defends that top spot ahead of Bautista in 2nd, but Razgatlioglu right back up with them now, and we could have another bar-banging fight, the like of which we saw on the opening couple of laps of this race 1. Ray is then still in front by a couple of tenths of a second over Alvaro Bautista. Razgatlioglu, though, keeping a watching brief.
Yeah, interesting. We talked about the rear tyre options. Toprak with a slightly different front tyre to the other riders around him as well. For Ray and for Bautista, they've got a front tyre that should give them a little bit more confidence and stability on the front on corner entry. A little bit stiffer. So Toprak, he's using a slightly different option to them. So that might come into its own as the race progresses as well. Obviously, track temperatures now 45 degrees, as hot as we've seen them all the way through the weekend.
Big move from Alex Lowe's in the background of that shot, diving down the inside of Xavi Vieque. Looks as though he's got it done for 7th position. Ray then starts lap number 10 as your race leader, ahead of Bautista in 2nd. Toprak Razgatlioglu in 3rd. New personal best lap from Jonathan Ray at 1 minute 34.481. He's gradually winding up his speed as the race goes on. Has he saved enough for the latter stages to hold on ahead of Bautista? Far from straightforward. Razgatlioglu 3rd, only half a second down. Bassani now under 2 seconds back. Rinaldi with a new personal best, beginning to gain in ground. He's bringing Andrea Locatelli with him. 2 fights in 1, 1st and 4th, just as in the World Championship this year.
Yeah, Bassani's had a big drop off in pace the last couple of laps down into the 135s. Everyone else able to keep themselves a few tenths of a second faster, so for him he's going to be under pressure pretty soon from the likes of Rinaldi.
Here goes Bautista in towards turn 8 for the lead on lap number 10, but just as in his fight with Toprak Razgatlioglu before, he runs too wide coming off of La Quercia, and Jonathan Ray slots straight back up the inside. And actually Bautista now is going to come under attack from Toprak over that 2nd place.
Yeah, for Toprak, he's been able to see that opportunity to close right up on him. He had been half a second behind, now he's only within a couple of tenths of a second before he comes to the section of the track that does play to Ducati strengths. But for Toprak, it's now about trying to get himself close enough to be able to try and just force a mistake out of Bautista, see if you're able to get yourself into the mix in some of the slower corners. But look at how much time that Bautista's been able to stretch out of Toprak there just through the fast section.
You get the feeling that Bautista, if he were to hit the front, would have the pace to try and break away, because particularly coming off turn 10, all the way through turn 11, through turn 12, when we've seen him coming off turns 9 and 10 behind Jonathan Ray, he's looked far faster, but there's just no way through. It's all single file through there.
I don't think he's got the pace to really pull away, but I don't think anyone would have the speed to be able to attack him. And these 3 riders look that they're pretty closely matched right now. I think Ray and Bautista especially seem to have very similar potential underneath them. It's just where they make their lap times is very different. And when you've got that top speed advantage, it just gives you that big advantage for Bautista.
Gabriele Riu on his return to World SBK after sitting out the Estoril round. Looks like he may well become our 4th retirement in this race. We lost Alessandro Del Bianco in the very early stages. The substitute rider Christophe Ponson went down. Philip Ertl we saw with retiring ultimately, and then Gabriele Riu looks like he's reboarded his machine though, so hopefully he'll be able to continue on. We pick up the leaders again on lap number 11. Jonathan Ray up at the head of the field. Alvaro Bautista's had a couple of lunges. It's almost like he's weighing up his prey and trying to find the weakness for Ray. And where will that weakness come?
Looked like a small mistake there from Bautista again and through turn 10, but he's able just to gobble up the gap now to Jonathan Ray. And I think that's what makes it seem that he's got that speed advantage in terms of overall performance. It's just because he can close up that margin so quickly on the straights. But in terms of the ultimate performance of the Kawasaki and Ducati, they do seem pretty closely matched right now. But we're moving into the second half of the race now, where tyre management becomes really important.
As the race at the front begins to settle down, this is where the action is. Axel Bassani made a frantic start from 10th on the grid to move up into 4th position, but he's now beginning to fade, and whether, as I suggested while he was making those passes, he's just used up a little bit too much tyre in the early stages remains to be seen. But either way, it's Rinaldi who's coming into his own at this stage of the race. Bassani digging deep last time around just to consolidate his advantage at a couple of tenths of a second, but even then Rinaldi still taking another half a tenth of a second out of him.
Yeah, and he had been pulling in 3-4 tenths of a second a lap on Bassani as well before that, so that shows the potential that Rinaldi has in the number 21 machine. He'll try and make a move into turn 8.
Andrea Locatelli initially was able to go with Michael Ruben Rinaldi, but Rinaldi's pace has been such that even Locatelli now has dropped a second behind. Alex Lowe's coming back at him, having moved through successfully on Xavi Vieque. 2 equally strength machines, of course. The Ducatis in 4th and 5th positions. Bassani versus Rinaldi. So Rinaldi's not going to have it straightforward on the brakes to try and make that pass. Back up at the front, 2 tenths between Jonathan Ray and Alvaro Bautista, who's gobbled up all of those meters that he lost earlier on.
Yeah, and he's going to be in a position now to try and put some more pressure on Jonathan Ray in the run between 11 and 12.
As they come through then, Corvone, the fastest corner on this Misano World Circuit, and they come down towards the slowest corner now through a sequence of right-handers decreasing radius corners till we get to turn 14. Slowest on the circuit, and then the gradual build up through the final two turns 15 and 16. Bautista's been so strong in the second half of this lap this weekend thus far, but where can he find a place to overtake? It's going to have to be coming off turn 16 and in towards turn number 1 here for Alvaro Bautista. Start of lap 13 then, Bautista with a great run coming off the Misano corner. He's almost alongside Jonathan Rea, but again Rea plays chicken with him and he's last on the brakes and holds on to the lead. Michael Ruben Rinaldi now through for 4th position on Axel Bassani, so the factory Ducati back in front of the independent, and Bassani may well now come under pressure from the likes of Andrea Locatelli and Alex Lowe's behind.
Yeah, Lowe's with a new personal best last time around, and looking at the times, it was only the top 3 that were faster than him as well, so that bodes well for Kawasaki to show that that bike is working well in these conditions. But Jonathan Rea is going to be under pressure on the run into turn 8. Once again, just got an update on the track temperature from down in pit lane. It's 53 degrees out there.
Here we go into LaQuercia on lap 13. Bautista's tried this move before and failed. Is he going to fail this time? Yes, he is. Jonathan Rea again with the cutback, sweeping through. Bautista will then try and build himself up, see if he can make a move and catch Jonathan Rea by surprise somewhere. He was close at turn 12 earlier on. Rea a little bit off the line. Bautista preferring a tighter line coming off turn number 10, and now he can use his acceleration. They come in towards Curvone. You're not going to make a pass there, are you? Yes, he is. Bautista comes firing through at the fastest corner on the circuit, and Alvaro Bautista leads at the home of Ducati.
Yeah, Rea needs to attack straight back, and Bautista is too far adrift. The reason I said about the track temperatures is the grip is going away from these riders right now, so I wanted to check what it was down in pit lane, and that's why we're starting to see everyone scrambling around a little bit, start to lose the line a little bit, running a bit deep into a few corners.
Coming through the final turn then for Alvaro Bautista at the end of lap 13. It's certainly been unlucky for Jonathan Rea. He now sees the rear end of that Ducati as they come down the start-finish straight, and 0.3 of a second is the margin as they cross the start-finish line, and that is the power and the strengths of the Ducati in the second half of the lap.
Turn 4 is the key chance for Jonathan Rea. He needs to attack straight back.
So it's the southern loop, as it were, through Rio, but it doesn't look as though he's close enough. Getting all out of shape there, Jonathan Rea, as they came in towards turn 4. Bautista defence.
But you can see how much faster he is mid-corner through there compared to Bautista. That's where his bike's working better than Ducati. But once you come onto the straight, it's going to start to stretch out once again, so it gets harder and harder for Rea to get himself into position to attack.
This is one of Bautista's key strengths in towards turn 8. The back straight here at the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli tried to pass Toprak Razgatlioglu earlier in the race, twice tried to pass Jonathan Rea through there. In the end, it enabled him to set up a manoeuvre then in towards turn 11. Very bold statement, that one, from Alvaro Bautista, because we'd said earlier in the race that you almost needed the rider in front of you to be compliant if you're going to make a pass like that one, and by the time Jonathan Rea saw that Bautista was there, he was already alongside and through.
Well, it's a lot easier to acquiesce when you know that there's no defence, and certainly down that straight, Rea would have known that.
Bautista wide. Alvaro Bautista very wide indeed, and off the circuit altogether, manages to come back on in the path of Jonathan Rea and hold him behind him for the moment. So not as straightforward as perhaps things may have initially seemed as far as Alvaro Bautista is concerned. Is there a chance for Jonathan Rea to strike single file through the final 2 turns here in Misano? Rea picked to the tail of the Ducati, but look at the power then down the start-finish straight. Toprak Razgatlioglu retiring from the race with mechanical problems at the end of lap 14, and Razgatlioglu, winless in this 2022 campaign, is going to go another race without a victory. It's 10 in a row now this season for the man who defends his title this campaign, and Razgatlioglu's hopes really are in tatters with Bautista leading the way. Remember, he already trails by 52 points. Add another 25 to that if things stay as they are at present.
Yeah, for Toprak that could well be curtains, but that's mainly down to the consistency we see from these top 3 riders in the championship. But now for Toprak, it's all about just trying to build himself back up to tomorrow's race, but that's such a big shame for him. He's ridden well this year, just hasn't had the actual wins to show just how well he's ridden.
Second retirement of the season as well for Razgatlioglu. You spoke about the consistency. Bautista hasn't been off the podium yet in 2022. Jonathan Rea and Toprak Razgatlioglu came together, of course, in Assen race 2, and that's what cost them so dearly, and it's the reason that Bautista leads us at present. If things were to stay as they are, he would gain another 5 points over Jonathan Rea to be 22 points up, but as I said, 25 points set to be lost here by Toprak to Bautista out in front. Remember when he dropped over 30 down last season, he said it's game over for the championship. Well, this time it really might be.
Yeah, you can see they're just retiring from the action. A shake of the head for Toprak, and now it's up to him to regroup. It's up to Yamaha to regroup as well. You can see Andrea Dossley down there in the pit box, and the frustration's going to be growing for Yamaha.
Yes, Dossley will be glad he's wearing sunglasses at the moment. Lap 16 of 21, and barring major dramas here, both Bautista and Ray will be taking sizable points gains versus Toprak Razgatlioglu. The other rider, of course, who is set to capitalise here, Michael Ruben Rinaldi, who moves into a provisional podium position once again here in Misano. Opportunity for Ducati to make it a 1 and 3. They've also got Axel Bassani waiting in the wings. Since being passed by Michael Ruben Rinaldi, he's only 0.6 of a second down on him, so he's managed to dig in quite nicely, even though Rinaldi is setting new personal bests at this stage of the race. He's 5 seconds behind the lead duo, though, so I think it's too tall an order to suggest that he might be able to contend for the race victory. But consolidate third certainly looks like that's within Rinaldi's hands. Bassani behind him, Lowe's 1.5 seconds back, ahead of Locatelli, who's down to 6th, Vierge 7th, Gerloff, Lecuona and Redding rounding out your top 10 now.
Yeah, it's going to be worth keeping an eye on Jonathan Ray in the run into turn 10 on the next couple of laps. That's where he started to struggle the last lap when we were riding on board with him, and just starting to really find it difficult to get that bike stopped through there whenever you're braking on the lean angle. But certainly for Jonathan, he's put in as much of a fight as he can. The gap now out to 0.7 of a second, unless we see another mistake from Bautista. That's in all likelihood going to be too big of a margin to make up.
Michael Rinaldi, we see here, looking set to return to the podium here in Misano. It's been a fair wait for his first podium in his 2022 campaign. He was so close on 3 occasions in Aragon with 3 4th positions. Hasn't had much luck in the 2 subsequent rounds. As up at the front of the field, we get a real contrast. Toprak Razgatlioglu retiring to his pit box. Alvaro Bautista piling on the misery for Jonathan Ray. A new fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 34.364, and only a fraction away from the outright lap record. And it's lap 17 now of 21, so going deep into the race with astonishing paces, Alvaro Bautista.
Yeah, and that's only 0.8 of a second off the lap record, so it shows just how competitive he is. Just looking a little bit further down the order, we've still got a few battles going on out there. Garrett Gerloff putting the pressure now, and Javi Vieira in a battle for 7th. And you can see there just a replay of Toprak just retiring from the race. You can see the frustration for him at the moment, and then in the pit box as well, and just their sense of disappointment and disbelief at that technical issue taking Toprak out of it.
And in the background of the shot, you can see Alex Lowe's getting alongside Andrea Locatelli. Lowe's now up into 5th position. The gap's beginning to stretch out then among our leaders here in Misano. Bautista leading by over a second. I think Ray has now settled in for 2nd place, 1.3 seconds down. Rinaldi in 3rd, 5 seconds back. Personal best after personal best, but even then he's not really making up any chunks of ground on Jonathan Ray. He's just got the gap down to less than 5 seconds. Axel Bassani, in 4th position, 1.3 seconds back. Then it's Lowe's 1.7 back. Closest riders up towards the front. Garrett Gerloff making one of his late race charges. Standard practice for Gerloff these days, for whatever reason, on a lighter tank of fuel. And as riders struggle for grip and tyre life in the latter stages, Gerloff is able to march on. So the fight probably for 7th position late on here between Vierge and Gerloff. And we pick them up now in 7th and 8th places.
Yeah, and for Gerloff on that number 31 machine yesterday, he did an 18-lap run. We're now in lap 18 of this race, so he's one of the few riders that knows what to expect from his tyre as the race progresses. And now it's up to him to see whether or not he's going to be able to make a move on Vierge to get into the top 7. But certainly for Gerloff, he would have been wanting a little bit more from this weekend. But he does have that knee injury. He says it doesn't affect him, but you also know he's a rider that's under pressure to get out there, try and perform and be able to make sure he's got a job for next year. So he will know that he needs to get through on Javi Vieira. But certainly as it is, still Locatelli, the carrot in front of him as well out there. So needs to clear Vieira and then see if he's able to close in on Locatelli.
Yes, after this round we head into another fairly significant break before the next track action in a month's time. So plenty of contract discussions, and no doubt the rumour mill will be in overdrive during that spell, but Garrett Gerloff trying to stake his claim for a place for next season. He's currently 8th on track. He's actually lost a couple of tenths of a second through that second sector. We saw him trying to get in hot in towards La Quercia in the attempt to get alongside Xavi Vierge for 7th position, but no way through for him for the moment, at least. Still a few tenths of a second the gap there. A couple of seconds then back to Iker Lecuona in 9th, and Scott Redding rounding out your top 10. Lonely race for Scott, 7 seconds down on his nearest rival, and 21.5 seconds down on the race leader. Forget about making that comparison, but he is up ahead of Loris Baz, 1 place ahead of Baz, the 3rd of the independent riders and the 2nd of the BMW. So we're watching Scott Redding here, far cry from his efforts in Misano last year with 3 4th places. As far as the lead runners are concerned, Alvaro Bautista just crossed the line at the end of lap 18. Another new fastest lap of the race at 1 minute 34.221, and that is a lap record pace. And we're only at race 1. The Tissot Superpole race should be even faster tomorrow.
Yeah, and certainly from what we've seen in this race, it'll be interesting to see what everyone opts for during that 10-lap Superpole race tomorrow morning. Maybe for the first time we'll see riders opt for that Q tyre, the 10-lap tyre, to see whether or not they're going to be able to give it a chance in that Superpole race. But certainly from Bautista's perspective, he's shown just how dominant he can be. Once he had that clear air in front of him, he's been able to just keep his pace really consistent, and he's now stretched out a lead of over 3 seconds to Jonathan Rea.
Yes, the SCQ tyre, of course, the qualifying tyre that's available to the riders in the Superpole sessions, but also in the Superpole race. Nobody's been brave enough to try that over the 10-lap distance yet in 2022, but we'll see if that might cause a shake-up, particularly in the early laps, potentially tomorrow, if anyone goes for that gamble. Alvaro Bautista streaking away up at the head of the field. Well, doesn't look as though he's really backing off to too great an extent. Another mid 1 minute 34 there. Jonathan Rea certainly is backing off. He's now 3.8 seconds down, just bringing it home for 2nd place. Look at the relentless pace of Alvaro Bautista.
Yeah, I said at the start of the race it was going to be about Luca keeping the 34s. I thought that was going to be high 34s. I wasn't expecting to see a 34.2 with only 3 laps to go, and then back into those mid 34s from Bautista. It really has been an impressive performance by him. 2 laps to go to get it home, and 2 laps before the Ducati fans can go mental here on Saturday.
Yes, absolutely, and all of the team personnel as well, I suspect, will be going a subdued version of mental in the pit box when we get to the end of 21 laps.
We've met Federico, the Ducati press officer here in WorldSBK.
Yes.
No chance it's going to be a low-key celebration for him, but certainly for Bautista, this one's going to mean a lot as well, because he's been able to get himself to the front of the field. Obviously, there's the strengths and weaknesses of the Ducati compared to the other bikes, but look at the pace that he's had once he's been able to get to the front. Really has been a really well-judged ride up to this point. A lap and a half to go for him.
Press officer, is he? I thought he was master of celebrations. Some of the videos that we've seen of past successes of Alvaro Bautista, and this is going to be yet another. Took his 20th victory last time out, his 20th, of course, with Ducati as well. This is further back down the order with Tito Rabat, the number 53. And he's currently outside of the points. This is the last of the points-paying positions with Luca Bernardi, P50.
Yeah, we've got a couple of battles left on track to finish off. Bassani is now under a little bit of pressure from Alex Lowe's, only about 7/10 of a second between them heading into the last lap. Gerloff still right behind Xavi Vierge, so that's 2 battles that could change positions. Bassani's done a really good job through the course of this race so far, and recovered from qualifying effort that he probably would have expected to be a bit better in the 4th row of the grid, but in this race he's been really strong. Got onto those leading riders at the start of the race, and now he's trying to just hold on to that 4th position.
Alvaro Bautista then making his way through the final lap, 4.2 kilometres here in Misano, and he's done the hard work in the early laps. He had to battle with Jonathan Rea and Toprak Razgatlioglu. They weren't going to let him get away with it in straightforward fashion, but in the end this has turned into a fairly routine victory if things stay as they are at present.
It's certainly as routine as we've seen in 2022, but for Jonathan Rea it's also a good performance as well. He's able to pick up 20 points for the championship, and he knew coming into this race it was going to be tough to be able to get on a par with the Ducati riders, but it also shows the progress that Kawasaki have made from last year.
Yes, those battles further back look largely settled, aside from Vierge versus Gerloff for 7th position. Lecuona and Redding still rounding out your top 10, but none of them can even dream of catching Alvaro Bautista here this afternoon. Could we be at the beginning of an extremely memorable weekend as far as Ducati are concerned? Alvaro Bautista has dominated thus far. Pole position, the new lap record, and now the race victory. He's been a winner in each of the 4 rounds of this 2022 campaign now. Alvaro Bautista takes the checkered flag and extends his lead at the top of the 2022 World Championship with victory on home soil for Ducati. 2nd place goes the way of Jonathan Rea. 3rd to Michael Ruben Rinaldi. Axel Bassani is best of the rest. 3 Ducatis in the top 4 positions. Alex Lowe's rounds out your top 5 ahead of Andrea Locatelli. Vierge holds on ahead of Gerloff by a few tenths of a second. Lecuona and eventually Redding rounding out your top 10.
Yeah, 3 Ducatis inside the top 4. Obviously, Toprak would have been inside those positions as well. So as it was on today, 3 Ducatis inside the top 5 fastest riders out in the racetrack on a consistent basis. That shows you just how strong the package is around this track. We knew once the track temperatures came up, if we were anywhere around 50 degrees, that Ducati was going to be the bike to beat. But Bautista's pace and consistency there really was impressive.
Yes, when we made our way in this morning and we did our usual predictions, you gave me temperature windows as opposed to race winners, and said, well, if it falls between that temperature margin, it's going to be that manufacturer and so on. We fell right into the window that you gave me for a Ducati win. And guess what we got? Alvaro Bautista taking the checkered flag.
Yeah, didn't get a chance to put any money down, unfortunately. But for Bautista, it's never much of a surprise whenever you're able to see him able to challenge for race victories with this bike. He's been so strong 2019 and this season, but this year the change we've seen is he keeps a cool head. He doesn't get himself panicked. He makes sure he gets the job done.
Yes, I wondered whether Bautista would back off in the latter stages just to bring that victory home, but he was still running relentless pace right the way to the finish. The final lap a little bit more cautious than perhaps earlier on, but Bautista absolutely decimating his rivals, and Jonathan Rea easing off late on. But even so, it's going to be tough for anyone to go with Bautista over the 2 races tomorrow. More opportunities for Bautista to extend his championship lead.
Well, the Super Pole race at least gives a really good opportunity to be able to bring the fight to him. And also, we will see that riders will make a step forward. For Kawasaki, they've now got 21 laps of knowledge of this tyre. Bautista was using a different tyre to Jonathan Rea. It'd be interesting to see whether or not that was a bit of a factor in it as well.
As you can see, the great and the good are here today. We've seen legends throughout. Some of the veteran performers, the Rossis and the Biagis of the world, and the modern generation as well, all enjoying what they have seen. Race 1 with Alvaro Bautista taking the checkered flag. Ducati victory. The celebrations are going to have to be short-lived, though, because we go racing again tomorrow.
Yeah, and thank God we do as well, because we're going to have good racing all the way through here. And Super Sports still to come as well, so hopefully they all hang around for that as well. There's also Manzi and Baldassari in that class for the VR46 Academy to cheer on.
Yes, all the smiles and everyone rushing down the red carpet to celebrate race 1 victory for Alvaro Bautista, but also the other Ducati men, as you say, Michael Ruben Rinaldi with 3rd, and top independent Axel Bassani, who'll also be in Parc Ferme. A little bit of good fortune to get Michael Ruben Rinaldi on the podium here today. It looked like it was going to be another 4th position finish for him to match his efforts from Aragon first time out. This will be a bit of a monkey off his back and something of a relief, because in 2022, when you're on the bike that's leading the World Championship, it's difficult to find yourself scrapping around for 7th and 8th places. But Rinaldi was much closer to the sharp end today. Yeah,
first podium of the year for Rinaldi, so that's really important. And he did the job that's expected of him. He was up there as the leader of that second group, and that's what he needs to do in pretty much every race, because Ducati have it set up where Bautista's their championship contender, just like it was Scott Redding last year, Chaz Davis the year before. Rinaldi's job is to be the backup, and he needs to be able to do that job as well as possible to try and hold on to that seat. But this is the first step that he needed to make.
As the Ducati riders come round on their lap of honour together, no manufacturer has managed more victories at any single venue than Ducati here in Misano. We talked about that stat before we got underway. We saw it on the warm-up lap as well, and they're only extending their run of success. Ducati around this venue, a very special one for them, inevitably because of the short distance of 140 kilometres to their factory just to the northwest of Bologna. Yeah,
and there's always pressure on them to perform whenever they come to any of their home races. There's always a big Ducati fan club here, and certainly they've been given something to cheer about, and it's going to be really cool to see Bautista now come through the masses of people in the paddock and then get ready for the podium right in the middle of them.
Win number 5 for Alvaro Bautista, level on race victories now in 2022 with Jonathan Rea. And after taking a pole position earlier on today, you wouldn't bet against Bautista moving in front of Rea for 2022 victories tomorrow.
You're certainly not going to bet against that, because we know that, especially in the feature-length race, he's got that pace in hand. Rea needs to find quite a margin for tomorrow's feature-length race. The Super Pole race, though, he should be able to bring the fight.
Yes, and Jonathan Rea victor in each of the last 2 Super Pole races, of course, so he will fancy his chances over that format. And perhaps it's just a question of damage limitation this weekend. We know there have been weekends already in the opening rounds of this campaign where you'd suggest Jonathan Rea was a little bit stronger. He was able to take points from Bautista in Estoril, possibly had the edge over him at stages during the Assen weekend also. Look at the race results then. Alvaro Bautista victorious in the end, the winning margin somewhat flattering him, but the final laps he really put the hammer down, and new lap record on lap 18 really is quite astonishing. Bautista ahead of Rea. Rinaldi makes it 2 Ducatis on the podium, and Bassani makes it 3 Ducatis in Parc Ferme. Alex Lowes rounding out your top 5. Good recovery ride from Lowes in the end after losing positions in the early stages. Important symbolic pass on Andrea Locatelli as well for 5th. Remember, Locatelli sits up in 4th in the World Championship standings, and Lowes will have been pleased to move through on him today. Vierge 7th, Gerloff 8th, Lecuona and Redding rounding out your top 10. Quiet race that for Iker Lecuona, and that leaves him somewhat further back from your lead quartet. Andrea Locatelli now just 15 points away from his teammate Toprak Razgatlioglu after Toprak's retirement. Real misfortune for him. Of course, he looked fairly comfortable in 3rd position and on the podium until the bike expired on him coming off the final turn mid-race. But Lecuona losing ground to the riders directly behind him, the likes of Michael Ruben Rinaldi now only 7 points adrift after completing the podium this afternoon, and Alex Lowes up into 7th position in the championship standings. He's now only 9 behind Rinaldi, and slightly more significant 18 to Lecuona. But good progress from Alex Lowes, good fighting right the way through the field as ever. When you're looking at one thing, there's something else going on further back, and the same on the opening lap when there was a real great fight going on with Bassani coming through, and they were swapping and changing for P1 as well, and the same later on. Razgatlioglu's bike expiring, Lowes passing Locatelli at the same time. That's what we get in WorldSBK. You've got to have 2 eyes that can look in different directions.
Yeah, you've got to have eyes in the back of your head whenever you're battling out there as well, and certainly whenever you've got the attacks coming left, right and centre, it is important to do that. This race, a little bit more of a tactical race compared to a lot that we've seen so far this season. The reason for that being those high track temperatures and just the layout here, meaning that there's a few places where you can get overtaken on the way into a corner, try and get the cut back, try and get the drive on the exit, so it does lend itself to that kind of racing. But you do need to be very tactical around Misano, particularly whenever you're having to manage that tyre as well.
Yes, turn 8 here in Misano, particularly entertaining from Bautista, lunging down the inside, carrying all of his momentum from that long run from turn 6, but then not able to get it stopped, and Toprak passed him or came back through on him there, and then there were 2 moves as well from Jonathan Rea to recover top spot. You can see as Axel Bassani shows us off his helmet. Just trying to see if we could catch any of his thoughts. Axel Bassani with another very summery look. That's what the riders go for here in Italy, isn't it, on their helmets?
Yeah, and it's a good time for Bassani to have that top 5 finish as well in 4th, the leading independent rider. That's why he's down in Parc Ferme. Exactly what he needed to do this weekend to be able to just keep himself in the shop window as well. We know that obviously he'll want to stay with Ducati for next year. It's just a question of whether or not there'll be any changes for him. But with Rinaldi up on the podium, it was job done for both of those Italian riders.
Yes, crucial moment when Bassani passed Rinaldi. That could have been symbolic, but Rinaldi coming back through, and he claims the final step on the podium here today. His first podium of the 2022 campaign. Sure to be a relief for him.
Michael Ruben Rinaldi celebrating your home round with your first podium of the season. You must be overjoyed.
Ciao a tutti. Yes, it's been a great race for me because our weak point was the consistent in the pace, but in this race Pirelli gave us a really good tire. Unfortunately, I couldn't push that much at the beginning of the race, and I think if I watch my race, I'm happy. But at the end, if Toprak doesn't break what he breaks, I think we finish first. But my race was good, so I'm happy about that.
Well done, Michael. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ciao, ciao.
Yes, quite sanguine about that result. He's well aware that had Razgatlioglu not retired, it would have been 4th position here today. And yet, we're well aware that 4th position is the best available to all but 3 riders, frankly, this season, unless things go wrong.
Well, the one thing about it is the bonus money still gets cashed just as easily for an inherited podium as for one that's been well earned. But Rinaldi rode really well, and he was in a position to be able to take advantage of Toprak's problem, and that's what you got to do.
As we see Michael Ruben Rinaldi, slow motion images from him after his 3rd place, first podium of the campaign. 3 4th positions at the opening round of the season. This is potentially a springboard here now for his best score of the 2022 campaign, after, of course, his best result in 2021 here at this venue. Rinaldi twice a winner here in 2021. And a 2nd place, his other result, of course. Here we see again Toprak Razgatlioglu's retirement from 3rd position. Galling for him to suffer a mechanical failure. First mechanical failure for any of our 3 main men in 2022, and it had to be Toprak. So many times he suffered from misfortune last year, but managed to still claim that title. It's going to be a lot harder for him to do it this year.
Yeah, it really is, and that was around about 2/3 distance, the sim coming back into the pits. And the sense of disappointment very clear for Toprak, but he had ridden a well-judged race up until that point. It was just a case of the other riders had a little bit more than him, but it's going to be up to him now tomorrow to bounce back from that disappointment, try and get yourself a result in the Superpole race, and then see what happens for race 2.
Yes, Michael Ruben Rinaldi then claiming the 3rd position here today with Jonathan Rea and Alvaro Bautista. They were already in front of Toprak, but 16 points at very least going begging there, which would have seen the gap at 61 rather than 77. That's a fairly significant difference in what might have been for Toprak. But frankly, unless he can routinely get in front of Bautista and Rea, those lost 16 points aren't going to mean too much anyway.
Well, that's the one thing, is that there's so many points still to make up for Toprak, and it's just been a tough start to the season for him. And he said in Estoril at the last round that he felt that he was under pressure with the number 1 plate on to always have to lead sessions, always try and be at the front. And then he tried to relax into it a little bit more. He looked like he was riding as what he could in this race, just didn't quite have the same pace as Bautista and Rea. It was just one of those races that seemed to get stretched out a little bit more than what we're used to seeing in World SBK this year.
Yes, in the end it was a fairly calm final quarter of the race, and certainly once we'd lost Toprak and then the stuffing went out of Jonathan Rea's challenge with a series of impressive laps from Alvaro Bautista, things began to settle down. In fact, inside of those points positions, only 2 gaps were less than a second over the line. One was between Vierge and Gerloff in 7th and 8th, and the other was Bernardi and Baz for 14th and 15th positions. So fairly strung out by the time we got to the checkered flag, but the first half of that race, 2/3 of that race, were as compelling as ever.
Yeah, as ever, and certainly the battle between Ducati, Kawasaki, Yamaha does just show the different strengths of each bike. They're all road-going bikes, and they've all got different strengths, and it's up to the teams and the riders to make the most of what they have available.
And Jonathan Rea did exactly that with 2nd position in race 1.
Jonathan Rea, good scrap for the lead in the early stages there, and you must be pleased with another podium.
Yeah, sure, really pleased, because I felt like we got 100% from the package today. Although riding with Alvaro, I feel like we can make some improvements tomorrow. I was able to see what he was doing a little bit better on the bike. Also, yeah, so super happy to be 2nd. He did an incredible job. Congratulations to him. Congratulations to Ducati. They were much stronger today, so try again tomorrow. And yeah, we have some optimism. We can fight tomorrow.
Great stuff. Thanks,
Cheers.
Jonathan.
Thank you.
Yes, we have every reason to think that Jonathan Rea will be able to fight tomorrow, particularly the Tissot Superpole race. But unfortunately for him, this is the view that he had all too often, which was Bautista's backside in the second half of the race. But good scrapping with Alvaro up until Bautista finally escaped away later.
Yeah, that was lap 1 of the race, and then midway through the early stages, we saw Jonathan Rea able to hit the front. Toprak was up there as well. It looked like we really were going to get a 3-way fight for the lead, and then Toprak just didn't quite have the same pace. race. Bautista then, once he was in a position to be able to attack, he was able to get to the front. And once he hit the front, you knew Ray was going to have to answer straight back. But the way that Bautista made the move into turn 11 meant that Ray wasn't in a position to be able to attack back. It was good riding from Bautista to set up that move.
What a move it was as well. We'd seen him think about it earlier on in the race in towards turn 11, and we said, surely no one's brave enough to do that. But he was brave enough to do it through Curve Verne, the fastest corner on the circuit here in the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli, and that's where Alvaro Bautista made his move for victory.
Alvaro Bautista, stunning performance, a move at the fastest corner of the circuit to take the lead, and he just got faster from there on in.
Yeah, I take some risk in that corner, no, because it's not easy to overtake, but it was a few places that I can pass Johnny, so I tried that one because it's difficult. Yeah, I'm so happy, no, because today track condition was very difficult, very tricky, and so slippery. So at the beginning I tried to understand how was the condition and where the limit was, because it was different from this morning. So at the beginning I just stay calm, and we start to battle a little bit between Toprak, Jonathan, and me. Then I saw that Toprak maybe was struggling a little bit entry on the corners, so I just stayed behind, but I felt that I can go faster, no? But Jonathan passed both riders, and then I tried to stay behind him because he was a bit faster than Toprak. Then mid-race or the last 10 laps, I felt that my pace maybe could be a bit better, so I tried to get the leader and try to put my pace and see if Jonathan can follow me or not. So I did it. I'm happy because I didn't make mistake. Yeah, I won here in front of all the Ducati fans, so I'm so happy to come back to Ducati and win here in Misano. So grazie ragazzi, speriamo domani più spettacolo.
Congratulations,
Even bigger show for tomorrow, says Alvaro Bautista to the Ducati fans here today, which is the vast majority of those who've come to the Misano World Circuit. Marco Simoncelli, let's be honest, there's the move from Bautista to hit the front on Ray.
Yeah, and you can see there with Ray pushed that a little bit wide, it just meant that there was no chance for him to be able to attack back. Every other time that we saw riders make moves, we always saw everyone try and immediately attack right back, and you can see the celebrations inside the Ducati pit box.
Yes, not quite subdued. Yes, you're not wrong. Alvaro Bautista then the winner by just over 5 seconds in the end from Jonathan Ray. An important victory, also a symbolic one when you think back to Misano in 2019 when he crashed out of race 2, remounting for a minor points-paying finish. But Alvaro Bautista, that symbolic shift change has been quite significant in 3 years.
Yeah, we've just seen a rider that knows what he has to do, and he's very comfortable out there on that bike. He tries to make sure that all the way through the races he's not putting too much pressure on himself, and that's what we've seen in this race and all the way through the season, and that's why he's leading the World Championship.
Lap record pace in race 1, and I suspect that we will potentially have another lap record set tomorrow in the Superpole race.
Yeah, and for Rinaldi as well, he was able to keep himself down in those 1:34s right until the end of the race, so that shows just how good the Ducati was doing, and maybe Rinaldi can make a small step tomorrow and get himself into the fight, because we have seen it where Bautista, Ray, Razgatlioglu have been joined at the front. We've seen Rinaldi and Aragon, Aston and Estoril. We saw it where we had other riders in the mix as well, particularly race 2 in Estoril, whenever we saw those in the scrap for 2/3 distance. It's just about staying in that fight all the way through the race, and that's the big challenge for Rinaldi and all of the chasing pack.
Yes, Locatelli's been knocking on the door on occasions as well. We've had contenders at very least, but no genuine pretenders in terms of riders who you really line up and think that they're going to be able to take the fight to these the three in inverted commas over the course of a full race distance. So for the likes of Rinaldi, you've got to take your wins when you can get them, because those opportunities to get onto the podium, if all things being equal, will be few and far between in 2022.
Yeah, the way it looks right now is just that it is that struggle all the way through, unfortunately, but that also just shows the depth that you have in World SBK. The 3 riders at the front are that consistent. The manufacturers' teams are that consistent with 3 different bikes, 3 different manufacturers. And then in that second group, we've got a load of riders always in the mix as well. So it is close there in the battle to get onto the podium, but it's a real challenge to get yourself on there.
The Pirelli Emilia-Romagna round, so fitting that Giorgio Barbier of Pirelli is making the presentations of the trophies on the podium. First to Michael Ruben Rinaldi, the Rimini racer, comes away with third position in race one. Jonathan Rea, it's second position, and when Rea has been finishing races, he's been up there on the podium every time as well. But it's a 10th consecutive podium for Alvaro Bautista, and it's a 5th victory in those. Dominant consistency from Bautista, and that's the main thing for him at this stage.
Yeah, it really is, and certainly for Bautista, that's the difference between winning and losing a World Championship. We saw that in 2019.
The team's presentation is made then to Ducati with their victor, Alvaro Bautista, who've also got the third step on the podium. So it's only one national anthem, and it's for Italy. Spanish one will be coming up first, of course, for Alvaro Bautista, your race winner here today.
Gentlemen, please, your respects for the national anthem of the winning rider, the national anthem of Spain.
Now, as I said, the one they've all been waiting for, the Italian, well, Michael Ruben Rinaldi nearly didn't wait, the Italian national anthem for your winning manufacturer, Ducati. So it's time for the Prosecco on the podium. And all of the big wigs promptly escape as swiftly as possible. A little bit of spray for Jonathan Rea, Michael Ruben Rinaldi and Alvaro Bautista, third and first respectively. Share their moment with the adoring fans and even get some of those crisp white shirts soaked as well. But big moment for Michael Ruben Rinaldi, his first podium of 2022, and perhaps an even bigger one for the two men who stood alongside him on that podium, because it's not exactly ruled out Toprak Razgatlioglu, but coming into that race 52 points behind Bautista and losing another 25 in one fell swoop, just as he did from race 2 in Assen. That could be a devastating blow for Razgatlioglu in the context of his title defence. So Alvaro Bautista staking his claim again. Does look like it could be a red weekend for Bautista here in Misano.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get the official photograph.
Your winning trio then of Michael Ruben Rinaldi, Jonathan Rea and Alvaro Bautista. Race 1 of the 2022 Pirelli Emilia Romagna round, and the good news is there are still 2 more to come. Confirmation of the race 1 results then. It's Alvaro Bautista victorious for 25 championship points ahead of Jonathan Rea. Dominant margin in the end with stunning pace late on from Bautista. Set a new lap record on lap 18. That takes some doing. Michael Ruben Rinaldi, third position, and a hard-fought one at that, because the top independent rider Axel Bassani comes home with an excellent 4th place. Rinaldi having to come through on him to claim the final step of the podium. Alex Lowe's not getting off to a good start, fights his way through the field and picks off Andrea Locatelli in an important move. Closing up as well for 4th position in the championship. Difficult day though for Iker Lecuona. He was fairly subdued in the end on the fringes of the top 10. Riders' Championship after race 1. Alvaro Bautista adds 5 points to his championship lead. It's back up to 22. But remember that when it was up at 27, Jonathan Rea was able to peg 10 points back over day 2 in Estoril. So don't rule anything out. There's a reason he's been 6 times a world champion. Toprak Razgatlioglu is now 77 points down. That's the margin that Andrea Locatelli was before we got underway with this weekend. So Toprak really needs to start winning races in volume and as swiftly as possible. So great alacrity needed from here on in as far as Raz Gatlioglu's race hopes are concerned. Ducati lead the Manufacturers World Championship, 9 points up on Kawasaki. Bautista picking up the big 25 today, ahead of Jonathan Rea with 20. Yamaha losing a lot of ground. Locatelli, of course, their top finisher after the retirement of Raz Gatlioglu through mechanical problems. Independent Riders Championship, Axel Bassani extending his lead with a big 13 points, of course, for 4th position. Loris Baz rather struggling this weekend. He's been calling it one of the most miserable of his World SBK career. And of course, Garrett Gerloff, although he made one of his customary late surges through the field, was restricted in terms of points piling. And the fact that he failed to score through the Estoril weekend, failed to take the start for any of the races due to injury, has cost him in that independent series. Teams Championship, Aruba IT Racing Ducati with positions 1 and 3, extending their lead over KRT, but with Jonathan Rea in 2nd and Alex Lowe's in 5th position, not too far adrift. They won't be too devastated about the state of play there. Independent Teams Championship, Moto Corsa take it away from Bonovo Action. I remember that Moto Corsa is a single rider effort with Axel Bassani. Bonovo Action, of course, have 2 riders, Loris Baz and Eugene Laverty, as do GRT Kota Nazane, though, again, fairly anonymous. Hyundai Inspired Rider Award, rider who makes up most positions, and it's Luca Bernardi who leads your standings there, 9 points ahead of Roberto Tamburini. Misano becomes only the 3rd circuit to reach its 60th Superbike race, with the Tissot Superpole race at 11 AM tomorrow. Race 2 follows at 3 PM local time, slightly later than usual. Join us then.